guys, welcome to another episode. This episode we're going to cover some other off-the-bike training in the way of cardio. Now, I'm no expert, so we're going to go over to Ben Greenwood from 100% Strength, and he's going to run us through how we get cardio fit for Finke.
Hey, I'm Ben Greenwood from 100% Strength. I'm a holistic performance coach who specialises in programming for dirt bike and off-road races. Today, I'm going to give you an insight into what one of our Race Ready programs looks like for someone preparing to race Finke. So the first topic we're going to cover when it comes to physical preparation for an event like Finke or Hatta or any sort of long endurance cross-country moto event that you're going to do is what I refer to as conditioning. Most people call it cardio. So conditioning, I call it conditioning because we are conditioning our energy systems. So I guess the way I think about it and how I've structured my little Race Ready performance pyramid over here is ideally the goal for us as dirt bike riders is to raise the maximum intensity we can maintain. So we'll get into that a little bit later, but that's our lactate threshold. If we can improve our lactate threshold, we're going to be able to maintain a higher intensity down that track in a race like Finke. So to do that, how do we actually improve our intensity or raise our intensity? We need to start at the foundation. So obviously right down the bottom here we've got things like nutrition, hydration, sleep, some mindset stuff as well. When it comes to the physical component, we want to be improving our strength, improving our mobility, and improving our aerobic base. So when you think about cardio, I think about it in three different, I suppose you would say, gears. You're going to have three different gears. That's probably what I see most commonly where people are perhaps going a little bit off the rails with their cardio training is they just have one gear. So when they go out, if we're thinking about heart rate zones, if you use a watch, like I recommend a Garmin or a Polar, whatever you're into, to track your heart rate whilst you're training. We've got zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, zone 4, zone 5. So zone 2 or less, which depending on where you're at, most people it's under 140 beats per minute. That's where you're going to be developing your aerobic base. In the middle here, sort of 140 up to around about 160, 165 for most people is going to be muscular endurance. And when we get up into this zone 4, into the red, somewhere in there is going to be your lactate threshold. When you get above your lactate threshold, you're going to cross over into that anaerobic energy system. When we go above our lactate threshold, our intensity declines. We can't maintain that. So what I see most people commonly doing is they spend all this time down in the middle. They think they're going hard, but they're not actually going above the lactate threshold, and when they should really be going easy and having a light aerobic base for a recovery session, they're actually going too hard to be training this energy system, so they end up spending all this time in the middle, so they only have one gear. So how I think about it and how I think you should focus your cardio efforts is around the three different gears, if you want to call it that. So you've got your aerobic base, your muscular endurance, and then your anaerobic threshold. So if we think about between now and Finke, depending on when you're watching this video, we've got about 14 weeks. So if I was writing someone a program now to prepare them for Finke, weeks 1 to 7 would be mainly aerobic base and some little bits of muscular endurance. So most of their cardio work would be down here, training this aerobic base, and they would be doing some towards the end, like towards the latter half of the 7-week block. We'd be bringing in some muscular endurance efforts while still doing some aerobic base as well. Then, for the last 5 weeks, weeks 9 to 14, then we would be working on the muscular endurance efforts and also start to bring in some interval work where we actually push above this lactate threshold. So that's going to be like your classic HIIT training, high intensity interval training. So to do that, we actually need to know what our lactate threshold is. To improve that or stress that energy system to become more conditioned, we actually need to know what our lactate threshold is, which your watch will tell you that. And in those high intensity intervals, we need to actually go above that lactate threshold, or if we don't do that, again, we just end up training the same energy system and spending all this time in the middle with that one gear. So when you're performing your cardio efforts, you're going to have some really easy efforts, like building this aerobic base. It should feel like you can do it all day. If you're huffing and you're puffing, gasping for air, and you need to have a rest, then it's not an aerobic base session. It's most probably up here into muscular endurance or even anaerobic. So it should feel like when you're doing a base session that you can just do it for all day long. It should feel that easy. That's when you're developing this energy system, which improves, to simplify it, improves the capillary, builds more capillary beds in the muscle, which allows you to get more oxygen into the muscle. When later down the track we start to bring this high intensity work in, you can actually get more oxygen into the muscle, so it's going to make these high intensity efforts easier. So you'll notice week 8 is missing, weeks 1 to 7, weeks 9 to 14. Week 8 would be a deload week. It's very important that you have recovery and structured recovery in your program. That doesn't mean we don't train. A deload week just means the intensity is a lot, and volume, we back them off. So when we're talking about training this aerobic base, ideally the longer you can fit in, the better, depending on your schedule. Now, when I say longer, like 2 to 3 hours is optimal for those longer base sessions. If you don't have that option, if you can only get 60 minutes in, then 60 minutes is going to be better than nothing. So most people gravitate towards high intensity training these days. I think that is, if you're a motocross racer and you're racing 15-minute motos every weekend, you perhaps maybe get away with that. I don't believe it's a sustainable way to train long term. It's actually very stressful on your body, HIIT training, and most people aren't getting enough sleep, eating enough quality food, and hydrating well enough to actually support high volume, high intensity training. So that's why we just drip it in towards the end once we've built this foundation. This is a much more sustainable way to train by targeting those different energy systems. So, like I touched on just then briefly, you can kind of get away with the HIIT training if you're racing 15-minute motos. If you're going to go and do an event like Finke, I really believe you need to be doing some of that longer duration effort, because endurance is mental. Obviously there's a physical component to the training, but that physical training is improving our mental toughness. So as soon as you begin to waver, to feel like you're fatigued and that thought comes into your head, that's the beginning of the end. So to build that mental toughness, to get better at the thing, which is endurance, we need to actually do the thing. So try and get out for some longer 2-3 hour efforts, again depending on what your schedule looks like, and progressively increase the duration and the intensity of those longer efforts as you progress up to the event.
Lots of great information. Thanks, Ben. So next episode, keep your eyes out. We're going to go over the strength side of things for Finke, and then we're going to follow up with a nutrition episode. So keep watching, guys.